Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So, I don't know if you're like me, and during spoiler season, if you just happen to wake up in the middle of the night, I don't know, say around like 3 a.m., and you just maybe look at your phone and you're like, oh, I should check spoilers, and then go back to sleep, and then you're like, I can't go back to sleep. Yeah, let me know if you relate to that, because Banner of Kinship, oh my goodness. Artifact for 5. As it enters, choose a creature type. This artifact enters with a fellowship counter on it for each creature control of the chosen type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1 for each fellowship counter on this artifact. Oh my goodness. Tribal decks rejoice. Everyone else flee in panic because this is a massive anthem for those decks. Yeah, I mean, like, previously we had gotten ones where, like, hey, okay, yeah, we'll get this in play. Well, not Door of Destinies, that, whatever that one is. There's an artifact, I think it costs 4, and basically it was like, hey, whenever a creature comes into play of that type, then you get the counter. This is like, no, we're front-loading all this stuff, all right? Here we go. You get this in play, and your creatures get +10/+10, or even more, of course. I mean, it depends on the deck, but, yeah, if you've got, say, Squirrels with Chatterfang, yeah, you're probably frothing at the mouth right now, being like, yes, so many counters, so much power, and toughness, too. But yeah, Cranko decks, Goblin decks are like, yeah, throw that in there, please, because all of a sudden now your little 1/1 Goblins are 20/20s, or probably even bigger than that. My goodness, this can get out of control in absolutely no time at all. Keep in mind, obviously, yeah, this isn't a set amount too. Like, even if you happen to get this down when you say have, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, creatures of that type in play, cool. I mean, that's already a nice amount regardless for 5 mana to pump your team. But also, yeah, you can proliferate it too. So there you go. Or blink it and reset it and that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, tribal decks, I can definitely see this being a new tribal definitely go-to card, staple, whatever you want to call it essentially, but this is a slam dunk in many tribal decks that go wide quite quickly. Again, if you literally just get like even 3 power out of this, that's still well worth it for 5 mana essentially, and you're most likely going to get a lot more than that for most tribal decks out there, so that's pretty crazy. And unlike oh my gosh, Coat of Arms, which kind of works in a similar-ish way. This is obviously, like, individual to just you. So this is just you. Your opponents don't get a benefit of it all, obviously. With what direction cards are going these days, we don't have those kind of, like, reciprocal effects on these types of cards. So there's no risk to it at all for you. It's just all upside for you in your tribal deck. Moving on. Preposterous Proportions. What a cool name for a card. Sorcery for 7 mana in green. Creatures you control get +10/+10 and gain Vigilance on a turn. Okay, so this is one of the, one of the cards that was kind of teased, essentially, by Morrow, right? We got the text, I believe, that, like, the +10/+10 for your creatures, and, yes, this does not grant any type of evasion, any type of getting damage through, like, with trample or whatnot. It's adorable. I mean, look at that giant squirrel in the background that's like, what's this? And just knocks over a tower of some sort. It's like, oh, no, my bad. But, yeah. Being able to just pump your entire team and swing out, because again, you have Vigilance, so there is no risk to this at all. I mean, unless your opponent's creatures have like Death Touch, basically. But yeah, you just basically go, okay, cool. My creatures are massive, I swing. I might not finish my opponents off, but it's kind of like a board wipe in a way, and also you're probably going to be able to take out at least one player with something like this for the deck that you are utilizing. That being said, again, the card that this reminds me the most, and I mentioned this during the teaser as well, is Vitalizing Wind, which I believe is 8 and a green, but it's at instant speed. It's only +7/+7, but that is probably still better than this. I mean, it is 2 mana more, but still, like, being able to just instant speed, be like, gotcha. Yeah, Wizards wasn't really about the gotcha for some of these cards for a foundation set. So again, it's not a combat trick. It's your opponents know it's coming. It's just like, oh my gosh, those creatures are massive. What kinds of decks are going to want this? Like Power Matters type synergies will want this. Really go wide strategies, especially ones that maybe have another way to get creatures through, potentially. Like if you've got things that grant trample, like what is it, Garrick's Uprising or whatever that one is. If you've got things that grant trample, if your commander grants evasion or trample to your creatures, a way to get things through, great. But yeah, this is a definite great way to pump a massive army quite quickly, and vigilantly is quite nice. So again, you can stay back for defense as well. You're not just swinging out, hoping that you finish people off, and then you don't, you're like, oh no, it didn't work. Uh-oh. So yeah, you're good. Moving on. Arbiter of Woe. That's some really, really grotesquely cool art. I mean, I feel like all demons should kind of look like that, right? Like, pretty gross. Okay, 5/4 demon for 6 mana in black. As this cross casts this spell, sacrifice a creature flying. When this creature enters, each opponent discards a card, loses 2 life, you draw a card, and gain 2 life. I mean, this is another one of those risky cards again, because, like, again, to cast this actual card, you need to sacrifice a creature, so there is some risk to that. If someone just counters it, it's like, oh, I get nothing out of this, and I lost another creature. That being said, if you're using a deck where you don't really care about sacrificing creature, that's completely fine. And on top of that, once you get it in play again, it's enters. It's not enters if you cast it. So there is no restriction on that. So if you like blink it a bunch of times or feign death type effect a bunch of times, you're not sacrificing creatures yourselves when this comes into play. You are forcing discard and drawing cards and gaining life and making your opponents lose life. That can be pretty good for those. So, like, will this make the cut in demon decks? I don't know, really. It depends on the demon deck, really. But if you've got a deck that can really use and abuse ETBs, it might be worth, you know, just being like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I lose 1 creature out on this, but I can really use and abuse that ETB to draw some cards, drain opponents, and also force them to discard too. That being said, some players stay away from things that force discard, and especially when you could use and abuse that to do it, like, again and again and again. Keep that in mind. Overall, probably more of a limited card. Next up. Goblin Negotiation. Just always funny when they have, like, goblins do this in a weird way, in a goblin way. Source for X red red. Deals X damage to our creature, create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to the number, the amount of excess damage dealt to that creature this way. Quite spicy. Yeah, it is single target removal, which, I mean, in Commander, you typically don't see, like, burn spell, single target removal, especially, like, burn X spell, where you have to pay a decent amount of mana to do so. So, that being said, obviously, you could just target something small and just make a bunch of goblins. Yeah, I mean, for a specific type of deck, like, I mean, would a goblin deck actually want this? Maybe. Because, sure, if you're going up and trying to take out, and you can take out one of your own creatures, too, if you, like, if your opponent's creatures are all large, like, oh, gosh, the lowest thing out there has, 5 toughness, I really want to make a bunch of goblins right now. You could take out one of your own, like, little 1/1 goblins or whatever, just take that out and just say, like, okay, I made some goblin tokens. It's not the most efficient way to make tokens. There's more efficient ways to make tokens. But yeah, if you're looking for like single target removal / token generation, it's going to be right for you depending on the deck. Next up, Celestial Armor. My goodness. Artifact equipment with some really cool art. For 3 mana in white, flash. When this equipment enters, attached to our creature you control, that creature gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has flying, equipped for 4. So this is one that, again, is like a great way to save, most likely, your commander out of nowhere, again, for an equipment-ish style deck, maybe a Voltron style deck. Again, someone's like, aha, gotcha, I'm going to remove your commander, haha, and you're like, no, flash this in. Commander's got hexproof, indestructible as well. Good luck taking it out with basically anything. Yes, there are certain ways to take it out, of course, still, but for that turn, usually it's protected for the most part. And again, a way to get your commander through with that +2/+0 and flying or whatever other creature. I'm just saying commander because typically this is like used for your commander. This is one of those cards usually. So yeah, if you have an equipment deck, it's a very solid piece of equipment. If you've got ways to recur equipment as well, like let's say this hits the graveyard for whatever reason, it's destroyed. If you can recur it, you can just reattach as well on that enter, which is quite nice too. So do keep that in mind. Yeah, overall, a pretty solid piece of equipment, especially for ones that maybe don't pay for, equip costs like certain, Knight Commanders as well. So yeah, that thing, yeah, that can be quite good for those kinds of decks where you're like, nah, I'm not going to pay that for anyways. So sure, you get flying now. Why not? But yeah, a good way to protect things as well as some evasion too. Next up. Quilled Great Worm. Thank you, MTG Goldfish, for the translated version of this one. A 7/7 worm for 6 mana. With Trample, during your turn, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage, put that many counters on it. You may cast this card from your graveyard by removing 6 counters from among creatures you control, in addition to paying its other costs. Okay, so this is, to me, like a new age Vigor in a way. Like Vigor is basically, like, if I remember correctly, and please let me in the comments below if I'm wrong on this one, but I'm trying to remember it off of memory, so here we go. It's like a 6 mana 6/6, I'm pretty sure, that whenever your creatures are dealt damage, other creatures, not Vigor itself, prevent that damage and get that many counters on them. This is kind of like the opposite, where it's like, yeah, don't worry about preventing damage, it's just based off of what damage you are doing. So again, instead of like your opponent's like, oh, okay, yeah, I just didn't block or whatever, I didn't deal damage to your creatures with vigor. This is like, oh no, I'm dealing damage to you or your creatures or whatever I'm dealing damage to. I'm getting that many counters on me. Things obviously that can really help with this are creatures that of course have first strike or double strike, deal that damage first, they get their counters first, so that essentially, yeah, it's going to be harder for your opponents to take out those creatures. Indestructible creatures, obviously. Ones that can protect themselves in whatever ways. One that can just get through. Yeah, basically just getting through and dealing combat damage, getting counters on is quite nice. And of course, yeah, being a 7/7 Trampler already with that is pretty golden. But of course, on top of that, being like, yeah, you know what? That wasn't enough because, hey, I can just keep getting this back out quite easily because, again, I'm building up all those counters. Again, it doesn't say specifically removing 6++1 counters. So if you've got any other kinds of counters you might want to remove, maybe some like -1/-1 counters or whatever it is, cool, you can do that too. So it could even be an upside for that. But yeah, just being able to bring this back out and be like, I get more counters. I bring this back out, I get more counters. It's going to be really hard to deal with this for the right deck. This could be a very good card in a +1 counters deck, a worm tribal deck, just kind of like big creatures deck too. Yeah, and extra combats, of course, as well. If you have a deck that is all about extra combats, congratulations. You're like, swing! Okay, cool. Haha, my creatures are bigger. Untap them all. Swing again, they're bigger again. Yay! And I did forget to kind of mention with that double strike, essentially, that like, when you dealt that damage, you're like, hey, deal the damage, get the counters. So like, let's say it was a 4/4, dealt damage, got 4 counters. And then all of a sudden that second hit goes in, that's for 8 then, getting 8 more counters. So instead of just gaining the 4 counters, now you're gaining, 12 in the turn? So it can be quite big, quite fast, depending on your build with something like this. A really good card. Definitely worth the title of Mythic. Next up, Rune Seal Wall. No offense, Rune Seal Wall, but not worthy of the title of Mythic. You're an uncommon, which is fair. A 0/6 artifact creature wall. Nothing wrong with that. For 3 mana in blue, Defender, tap, Surveil, 1. Pretty solid wall. Again, Arcades, the strategist decks, any kind of decks that really care about defenders or ones that have giant amounts of toughness for a low amount of mana. Like, there's definitely ones out there that have higher toughness for the same amount of mana or less mana, depending. Just, it's good. I mean, 3 mana for 6 toughness, that's nice. Defender, nice. Not nice, but, you know, for Defender decks, obviously, like, yeah, I want that. Tap Surveil 1, nice card selection / filling up your graveyard. Again, there are going to be certain just graveyard type synergies that might just want this. Is like, okay, I've got like a good way to just keep some big creatures away from me for a bit. And then literally right before my turn starts, again, I use this as a blocker. Great, I protected myself. Before my turn starts, tap Surveil 1. Do I want that on top next turn? No? Okay, graveyard, cool. Maybe it's something I can use on my graveyard like flashback, you know, reanimation, etc., etc., etc. Moving on. Soul Weaver. Okay, here we go. 4/3 Reach Spirit Spider for 3 mana in green. First up, Spirit decks typically aren't in green, usually. Spider decks, yes. So yeah, Spider, there you go. You got a really good new Spider. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. With that card in your hand, the rest of the bottom of your library in random order. What is that one? There's an enchantment where it's like pay a green mana, sacrifice a creature, and basically do this. I can't remember the name. It's like 2 mana. It costs a green to do that. I can see the picture of it. There's like a snake lady on it, but I can't remember what it is. Let me know in the comments below. But that's what this reminds me of. And this is a very powerful thing. This is essentially, you know, like Grim Haruspex, right? Grim Haruspex is, hey, when creatures die, you draw cards. That's lovely. This is like, hey, when non-token creatures. Again, it is non-token. Do keep that in mind. That is important, obviously. That being said, this is like, hey, are you like a creature-based strategy with like maybe aristocrats as well? Like, cool. You're sacrificing creatures. You get to keep getting, you know, creatures off the top of your deck in your hand. Cool, you're always hitting something of value if you are all about creatures. And again, if you're already set on lands, so you're not getting like flooded with lands with that. Although obviously this can work. Grim Haruspex is amazing. These can work together, you know, in an aristocrat style strategy where it's just like extra value off the top of your deck. But still, yeah, it could be even better than that potentially. There's some weird, like my first thought was like, how can I break this? Well, we're going to use some Legates. Look those up. Those are some weird cards, but basically just utilizing like Ornithopters or, you know, types of cards that you can play for free, like creature. Okay, sacrifice creature, sacrifice creature, sacrifice creature, sacrifice. A lot of different triggers to be had. Will I actually build it and play it? Probably not, because it's probably annoying to play against, like a little Stormy, but yeah, the potential of this is really massive for the right types of strategies out there. Again, like I said, spider decks, sure, good value just to be like, okay, yeah, if your creature dies, you replace it. That's already just nice for like any creature-based strategy. Like if your creature dies, you replace it in your hand. That's lovely. But especially for, again, aristocrat-style strategies where you're looking to get things out, like, say, a resummoning skeleton, sacrifice it, resummoning skeleton, sacrifice it with, like, a Viserys, you know, you keep getting extra value, essentially, and just, cool, all right, for 2 mana, I'm just getting creatures off the top of my deck into my hand. Lovely, a huge card. But now, really quick, many of you out there have been, well, really interested in Nimbus Visionary, so I decided to do a quick take on it. I already talked about the actual card itself, but did not have time on that episode to also go into cards that I would utilize with it. So for all of you out there that are excited about this one, here you go. And I do have another one for another exciting commander coming out as well, but we'll get to that in a little bit, okay? Nimbus Visionary, as a reminder, Nimbus went from Is It all the way to 5 color back to Is It. I mean, obviously this is like, you know, timey-wimey stuff, right? But still, 5/5 Dragon Wizard flying for 6 mana in Is It. You have no maximum hand size. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, you draw that many cards. The potential of this one is pretty crazy, and it's already getting a lot of attention from the Commander community, as it should, because, yeah, that's quite powerful. Yeah, you are going to be able to keep a massive hand. You're going to be able to draw a certain amount of cards throughout the game, and you basically have like a I get all the cards in group slug my opponents kind of strategy, or burninate them, however I want to go about that. So let's talk about some cards that are amazing with this one. First up, a newer card, just to highlight really quick, Razorkin Needlehead, a 2/2 Human Assassin for 2 mana in red. First strike during your turn. Cool, who cares? What you care about is whenever an opponent draws a card, 1 damage to them. This literally is just a, hey, when your opponents draw cards, you draw cards. This is literally just every single time your opponent draws a card, you draw a card. That is absurd. Absolutely absurd. Thermo Alchemist, another great card to consider as well. 0/3 defender, tap 1 damage to each opponent. Whenever you cast in source spell, untap it. Again, with 3 opponents, this is tap, ping for 3, basically, draw 3 cards, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, cool. I drew into this little cantrip. I cast that. Cool, all right, untap, do it again. I drew into this untap spell. Yeah, you can do some crazy things with something like this. Next up, and we'll get to another card that really works well with this one, but also if you have some discard type effects, which you very well might, because you're heavily incentivized to utilize that massive hand you're going to have, and there's some pretty cool ways you can do that with discard. Whenever you discard a card, 1 damage each opponent, which again will draw you 3 cards. So you literally just discard 1 card, draw 3, discard 1 card, draw 3. You could definitely combo with something like this once you get yourself set up properly. Also, you can, activate that ability. It's got haste 2/4, discard a card, draw a card for 2 mana, activate one if it's attacking. So sure, you can do that if you need to. But yeah, it's basically a way to draw 3 right then and there. Gutter Snipe, very effective, very efficient, of course. 2/2 Goblin Shaman for 3. Whenever you cast in or sorcery spell, 2 damage each opponent. Literally, any instant sorcery you cast, again, just the smallest little, say, cantrip spell, okay? You normally just draw 1 off of it, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're drawing 6 extra cards because this is 2 damage every opponent. That is 6 damage in total. Yeah, you're going to be kind of, disappointed when you take an opponent out. You're going to be like, oh, my card draw. I didn't mean to take you out so quickly. Dang it. Next up. Perforos God of the Forge. I mean, any of these kind of impact tremors type cards, if you got a decent amount of creatures in the deck, of course, but this is a very good one, obviously. Indestructible, 6/5, the whole devotion thing, don't worry about that. I mean, sure, it's nice when it's a creature, but whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, 2 damage each opponent. Again, literally any creature comes into play under your control, congratulations, you are drawing 6 cards, but you know what? Let's make it more than that with Solfim Mayhem Dominus. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent, or a permanent opponent controls, it deals double that damage to that player or permanent instead. There you go. Yeah, basically doubling up any of your damage means doubling up the amount of cards you are drawing. And again, you get to keep all of them. Pretty crazy. On top of that, again, like I talked about those discard synergies potentially, pay 1 and probably 4 life. But sure, you could pay, 2 extra mana if you want to in red, discard 2 cards, put an indestructible counter on it, so this can be really hard to deal with. And again, those, if this works with Glenhorn Buccaneer, you're like, okay, cool. I'll also just, because I discard 2 cards, draw 6. Thank you. Psychosis Crawler. Yeah, this one doesn't combo with your commander, but it works incredibly well with it, obviously. First up, Power and Toughest, each equal number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size. You're going to draw an absurd amount of cards. It's going to be a massive creature. On top of that, whenever you're drawing a card, each opponent loses 1 life. So yeah, you're going to take your opponents out quite quickly. If you weren't already doing so, again, with all these burn and nade effects, all these group slug type effects, yeah, it's going to work. I don't know if this ever happened before. Let me know in the comments below, but we've got a commander now that combos with previous versions. Actually, this has happened because it happened with Niv-Mizzet, one in the world. Okay. We've got another Niv-Mizzet that combos with Niv-Mizzets. Okay, basically we've got the Niv-Mizzet. Just you throw this Niv-Mizzet down, you either win or lose depending on your math calculations, but it's gonna be fun. Here we go. I guess technically you don't lose because you could stop this. Here we go. 5/5 Dragon Wizard for 6 mana. It can't be countered flying. Whenever you draw a card, 1 damage to any target. Whenever a player casts an instant source spell, draw a card. Already incredibly powerful commander. Again, when you have both these in play, all right, cool. You draw a card. All right, 1 damage to your opponent's face. Oh, your new mid-Niv says, cool. You hit an opponent with non-combat damage, draw a card. Oh, okay, this mid says, oh yeah, you drew a card. All right, 1 damage. Yeah, it's going to keep working again and again and again. Obviously, if you can take your opponents out without milling yourself out, not milling, but, drawing your deck and losing, or if you've got Lab Man, you win, obviously. You do the math calculation, but obviously at a certain point, if you need to stop drawing cards, just have Niv-Mizzet like ping anything but an opponent's face. You could ping your own face, you could ping a creature, whatever it is. Don't just lose. Niv-Mizzet the Fire Mine, basically the exact same thing. 4/4 Flying Dragon Wizard. I mean, same thing for this combo scenario. 6 mana and Izzet. Whenever you draw a card, 1 damage target creature or player, tap to draw a card as well. There you go. Plenty of great enchantments for this as well. Descent into Avernus, a great group slug type card. Beginning of your upkeep, put 2 Descent counters on it. Then each player creates X treasure tokens, and Descent Avernus deals X damage to each player X number of Descent counters on it. The first trip around the table, you are dealing 2 to each opponent. Meaning, you're dealing damage to yourself, but that's okay. 2 damage to all your opponents, that's 6 cards drawn. Next turn, 12. Turn after that, it just keeps going and going and going. 6 extra cards drawn every single turn on top of the previous amount that you had. Seismic Assault, one of my favorite card designs of all time. Yeah, I love like this, Ayla's Influence. I like these kinds of cards where it's like, yeah, discard value, why not? Discard a land card, 2 damage to any target. Very cool with this commander because you're like, oh, okay, cool. All right, discard, ping you in the face. Ha ha ha. All right, I draw 2. Oh, I drew another land. Cool. Discard, ping you in the face. Draw another 2. Like, how cool is that? And again, when you have literally no maximum hand size, you have an absurd amount of cards. You could have like 30 cards at the time in your hand when you play this, and you're like, I've got 12 lands in my hand. Wow, that's 24 extra cards I'm going to be drawing. I can probably draw more lands and do some pretty crazy things with this. Next up, Sulfuric Vortex. Again, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, 2 damage to that player. Player gain life, no life gain instead. Nice. This hits you as well. Again, these group slug ones that hit you, keep that in mind. That being said, you're probably going to be able to burn and nate your opponents down to the ground first with this one, especially with all the resources you're going to be gaining. Again, this is literally each trip around the table, you draw 6. Pretty crazy. City on Fire, any of those damage doublers, damage triplers especially, are obviously going to be very good because they're drawing triple of the card. So do keep that in mind. Fire Emancipation as well, of course. Lightning Bolt. Yeah, again, I rarely recommend Lightning Bolt. I know it's a staple card for other formats. It's just not as good in Commander because players have a lot more life total and creatures typically are a bit larger. So yes, this usually isn't as effective, but for this commander, this is literally just, hey, I can either, take out some small creatures, maybe a planeswalker, whatever it is, or I can just be Ancestral Recall. You literally just deal someone 3 damage in the face, and you're like, okay, I draw 3 instant speed for 1 mana. Great. But that, of course, is nowhere near as good as something like Price of Progress. Oh my gosh. Instant for 2 mana in red. Deals damage to each player equal to twice the number of non-basic lands that player controls. This can be an absurd amount. Just literally your next game, just be like, okay, count the number of non-basics. Yeah, that can be quite a bit. So all of a sudden your opponents are taking like 40 damage in total, and then you're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, awesome, I'll draw 40. Good for me. Earthquake, even something as simple as this, again, when it comes to like your board wipes, again, this will keep your commander around. X damage to each creature without flying in each player. Again, your commander is fine with that flying. So all of a sudden you're like, okay, cool, yeah, let's take out all the creatures on the ground. Whatever, I don't care about those. Let's deal however much I put into X to each player. Let's say it's 6. Okay, cool, I just drew 18 cards and wiped the board. Good for me. So yeah, this is a very spicy commander, one that a lot of players are excited about. And again, if you want to build around this commander, consider picking up some of these cards. There's going to be a card list link in the description below for this and the next commander I'm going to be talking about, which of course is Tiny Bones. Now, this is an adorable commander. Like, Tiny Bones is just a really cute character. Like, look at this little skeleton dude running around stealing things. Cool. Okay. That being said, as adorable as Tiny Bones is, it is a type of commander that I do like to tell, especially newer players, be careful with this one. Okay. please, if you have a playgroup already, ask them ahead of time, or those are your LGS, because some players don't like playing against masked discard, because it ends up just being, all right, heart of the cards, top deck, did I get something? Nope. Okay, you're just going to make me discard it, and then I got to wait till next turn, and then I don't get to do anything. All right, next turn, same thing. And some playgroups are completely fine with that, but again, the way to build around this one effectively and efficiently is literally get your opponents to discard all their things and then steal them from them and then beat them with those. That's basically what this does. 1/3 Skeleton Rogue. And again, some playgroups are completely fine with that. Just make sure you ask ahead of time unless you know your playgroups ahead of okay with it, okay, all right? 1/3 Skeleton Rogue for 2 mana in black. Whenever an opponent discards a card, exile from their grave where they stash counter on it. During your turn, you may play cards you don't own with stash counters on them from exile, and mana of any type may be spent to cast those spells. 4 mana in total tap. Each opponent discards a card. Activate only as a sorcery. So basically, sure, you could utilize Tiny Bones. 4 mana is not bad for this effect at all, really. Again, you're card disadvantage for your opponents and card advantage for you, essentially. It's basically like draw 3 in a way, kind of, while also making your opponents lose cards. So it's like Siphon Mind in a way, which is pretty cool. That being said, yeah, there's more effective ways to make your opponents discard and make their lives absolutely miserable. First up, though, let's talk about some artifacts that can be very effective for this. Air-Flowing Chalice. Okay, again, when it comes to this, and we need like a term for this so they're not just writing this out every single time, mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. We need like just a one-word thing for that, okay? Like just something, like mana fixed. I don't care. Find a word for it, wizards. It's a lot to say every time, all right? Yeah, because again, you can use any kind of mana to cast those spells. Just use like the most efficient mana rocks out there. Even if they just make colorless, who cares? Everflying Chalice artifact for 0, multi kicker 2, basically enters with that many charge counters on it for how many times you kicked it. So basically, you pay it for 2, taps for 1, pay it for 4, taps for 2, etc, etc, etc. The more mana you have, the more things you're going to be casting from your stash. Next up, Thran Dynamo, incredibly efficient. 4 mana, taps for 3. Again, doesn't matter that it's colorless, that is perfectly fine for this commander. Horizon Stone is great as well. If you lose unspent mana, maybe comes colors instead. Again, if you're like, well, I'd like to save some of these things, you know what? I'm going to hold my mana up. I'm just going to, before my turn, dump it into this. And then all of a sudden, instead of losing it, it just turns into colorless, which again is just like gold for you because it becomes anything that you want when you're casting your opponent's spells from the stash. Great. All of a sudden, it's just like a mana bank, which can be great for you. Guess Grimoire. Oh my gosh, with this commander. Artifact for 4. Whenever opponent discards a card from their hand, you may draw a card. Again, this turns your commander's ability into pay 4, tap your opponent's discard 3 cards. You get those cards, you draw 3 cards, which means that you have access to basically 6 cards for doing so. But of course, there are more effective ways to make your opponent's discard. This is a lot of value throughout the game for you. You don't even really need this to really gain value because, again, your opponent's discarding things equals value for you. That is basically your hand now. But still, getting extra hand, why not for this? Next up, Cunning Lethomancer, a 2/2 human wizard for 3 mana in black. Beginning of your upkeep, each player discards a card. Again, this does affect you. Sure, this is the type of commander where it doesn't matter if you have a hand. It does not matter at all because your extra hand, again, is that stash of cards that was your opponent's and now it's yours. And so everyone going down in cards is good for you because they don't have any card advantage with that and you have all the card advantage with that. Mind Slicer, a brutal card. 4/3, when it dies, each player discards their hand. If you got ways to sacrifice it, great. There's plenty of great ways in black, of course, like, you know, hey, pay 1 mana, like Village Rites, whatever, sacrifice it, draw 2 cards, cool. Or, you know, just keep it back in combat and your opponent's like, I can't swing at the Tiny Bones player because they've got a Mind Slicer, and I don't want to lose my hand. Literally, this is just, hey, okay, what are your opponent's hands? They're all yours now. They are all yours. Sure, you lost your hand, but who cares? Rankle Master of Pranks deals combination of player. Choose any number. Each player discards a card. Each player loses 1 life and draws a card. Each player sacrifices a creature. Yeah, again, if you literally want to be like, you know what, opponents, none of you have any cards, I'll give you all a card, cool, and I'll make you discard it with another way. Awesome, so I get those cards now too. Or just, yeah, repeat discard on this, or yeah, repeat Edict effect can be absolutely gross. Next up, speaking of gross, Waste Not. Hey, when an opponent discards a creature card, you make a 2/2 zombie. Discards a land card, add 2 black mana to your mana pool. When an opponent discards a non-creature non-card, draw a card. This is a brutally effective card, especially for this type of a strategy where you're like, yeah, discard, discard, discard. So much value for me. Bottomless Pit, so brutal. During each player's upkeep, the player discards a card at random. You don't get to pick. It's just going to be gone. Sorry about ya, but yeah, your best cards are going to be gone, and now they are mine. Necrogen Miss. Each player's upkeep, player discards a card from their hand. This one isn't random, still brutal. Again, literally on upkeep, just, yeah, you lose out on a card. Sorry, your cards are gone. Goodbye. Megrim, of course, if you want to get your opponents out of their misery, you can. Enchantment for 3 mana. Opponent discards a card, 2 damage to that player. There's other ones like, was it Liliana's, I can't remember that, Caress, is that one? But yeah, basically, ways to punish your opponents for discarding cards. There's ways to do that if you want to take them out in that way, or you can just be like, well, I'm just going to discard all those cards. You've got no hands, and I've got this giant stash of cards, and I will slowly but surely get your things into play and take you out with them. Oppression. Whenever player casts a spell, the player discards a card. Very, very effective card where players are making so many tough decisions, and none of them are the right decisions for them. Words of Waste. Brutal as well. All these things are brutal. Enchantment for 3 mana in black. Pay 1. The next time you draw a card this turn, each opponent discards a card from their hand instead. Yeah, from 1 card you are choosing not to draw equals your opponent's discard 3 cards in total, means that you're like, okay, I'm giving up on drawing 1 to have 3 stashed cards that I can use. You're going up in card advantage with that. Creeping Dread. Native upkeep, each player discards a card. Each opponent who discarded a card that shares a card type with the card you discarded loses 3 life. Again, another way to be like, yeah, keep discarding things, but also, sure, I'll drain you. Yeah, I'll let you get out of your misery. Painful Quandary can do it in a quicker way. Enchantment for 5 mana. Opponents cast a spell. They lose 5 life when they discard a card. So again, they're like, it's a decision that they literally have no right answer to. They are going to lose out. They are going to either lose a ton of life from this, or they're going to lose their hand and have no chance. Dark Deal, a great way to just get a ton of cards at once. Each player discards all the cards their hand, draws that many cards -1. Basically the Black Wheel, being able to say, hey, everyone gets a new hand, but I get the hand you discarded, and you get slightly less cards back this time. Delirium Schemes, very simple, very effective. Everyone discards 3 cards. Yeah, for 3 mana, this is, oh no, I go down 3 cards in card advantage for myself, but also I go up in card advantage by 9 cards because I'm stealing my opponent's hands, essentially. Gyreach Sanitarium, even a land can help you out with this. Taps for colors, pay 2, tap, each player draws, then discards. This is huge because all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, you guys don't have a hand? Okay, cool. Pay 2, tap. You have a hand. Now you don't. All right, cool. I just drew 3 cards basically from all of your cards that you discarded. And even if they do have a hand too, it's just like, yeah, pay 2 mana, tap, get access to 3 cards. What's not to love about that? Yes, again, I will warn you. Please, 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 please. This is the type of commander that, again, it looks adorable. Tiny Bones is a cute skeleton rogue thing. It's not an adorable style of play for certain playgroups out there, okay? Like, ask ahead of time if you are unsure about your playgroup or about those of your LGS. Ask ahead of time before you're like, yeah, go get all these cards, and then no one wants to play against my Tiny Bones deck because discarding doesn't make some people want to play Magic. So there you go. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. Comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.